I crowned in Charlotte Temple. John Steve crowned me in Charlotte Temple when I win the clash. Rankin Trevor was my teacher them time.
Supercat, the reggae and dancehall legend known as the Wild Apache, just turned 62, and trust me, what's happened since his glory days will surprise you. He went from Kingston street corners to dominating international stages, influencing everyone from hip-hop giants to rising dancehall stars. But his story isn't just about the hits. It's about the chaos, the vanishing acts, and the shocking comebacks that left fans scratching their heads. Today, we're breaking down the wild ride of Supercat's life and career. Buckle up, because this one's got more twists than a dancehall bassline. Supercat's beginnings. Before Supercat became the Wild Apache, tearing up dancehall stages, he was a kid named William Anthony Marrah growing up in Kingston, Jamaica. And when I say Kingston in the 1960s, I don't mean picture postcard beaches and resorts. It was like tough neighborhoods, crowded streets, and a soundtrack of reggae and sound systems were blasting from every corner shop. Music wasn't just entertainment, it was survival, it was identity. And for a sharp kid like William, it was a way out. He was born in December of 1963, right in the middle of Jamaica, finding its feet as a newly independent country. People were hustling, scraping by, and carving out new cultural voices. Out of that energy, reggae and dancehall were rising. For young William, the streets were basically a classroom. He didn't have fancy music lessons or a private tutor. What he had were sound clashes, community parties, and DJs who could make a crowd move with nothing but a microphone and a little attitude. That was the education he soaked up. Even as a kid, William had a gift for words. He wasn't the type to sit back and stay quiet. If somebody said something slick, he had a comeback ready. If a beat dropped, he could ride it. That quick wit and sharp tongue would later become his trademark on stage. You can see why fans called him the Wild Apache. The man was quick, fearless, and always ready to take a lyrical shot. In Jamaica, sound systems were like neighborhood churches, only louder and with way more bass. These mobile DJ crews rolled into communities with speakers stacked like towers, blasting music until the walls rattled. If you wanted to prove yourself as a young DJ, you jumped on the mic during one of these sessions. That's where William started shaping his skills. He studied the older DJs, learned their flow, and then twisted it with his own flavor. By his teens, he wasn't just hanging around sound systems, he was performing on them. He got his first shot with Soul Imperial sound system, where he started earning respect as someone who could rock a crowd. People noticed that he didn't sound like everyone else. His delivery was sharp, almost aggressive, and full of energy. He wasn't just spitting lyrics, he was commanding attention, daring the audience not to listen. And here's the thing, Jamaica in the 1970s and 80s wasn't an easy place to chase dreams. Opportunities were scarce, crime was everywhere, and the competition in music was cutthroat. But William had that mix of street smarts and determination. You couldn't intimidate him. If anything, the chaos just fueled him more. He learned to take risks, to keep pushing even when people doubted him, and to use his voice as both a weapon and a shield. It wasn't long before he picked up the stage name Supercat. Now, I know what you're thinking, what does a cat have to do with reggae? But in Jamaica, nicknames stick if they fit your vibe. Supercat had that fierce, unpredictable energy. Smooth one moment, claws out the next. Plus, let's be real, William Marrah doesn't exactly scream dancehall superstar, Supercat. Now that's a name you don't forget. By the end of his teens, Supercat was more than just another neighborhood kid with a mic. He was building a reputation, sharpening the style that would make him a legend. The early battles, the rough streets, and the sound system education all shaped him into the artist who would soon explode out of Kingston and onto the world stage. Dancehall breakthrough. Supercat didn't just stroll into the dancehall scene, he barged in like someone crashing a party with the best outfit and the loudest voice. By the late 1970s and early 80s, he had polished his skills on local sound systems, and people were starting to whisper his name. Well, whisper might not be the right word. It was more like shouted across the yard because once Supercat touched the mic, you couldn't ignore him. Dancehall, at the time, was exploding. Reggae had already made waves with icons like Bob Marley, but dancehall was the grittier, more street-level cousin. It was raw, fast, and spoke directly to the struggles and joys of everyday Jamaican life. Supercat's energy matched it perfectly. He wasn't about polished pop vibes, he was about straight-up lyrical fire, the kind that could light up a party or shut down a rival DJ. His first big break came when he connected with Early B, another rising DJ. Together, they started performing on the Kilimanjaro sound system. Kilimanjaro wasn't just some local setup. It was one of the heavyweights in the Jamaican sound clash scene. And when you're on a sound system that big, you either sink or swim. Supercat didn't just swim. He practically backstroked across the whole pool while everybody else was dog paddling. Crowds loved his mix of sharp wit, aggressive delivery, and that unique voice that seemed to cut right through the noise. He could hype a crowd with one line and then flip into storytelling with the next. This was also when he started dropping some of the lyrics that would later become his signature. Fans began calling him the Wild Apache, a name that stuck because of his fierce, unpredictable energy. Supercat's first recorded singles in the early 80s, like Mr. Walker and Boops, showed that his style wasn't just good for live clashes. It translated to records too. Boops in particular became a smash hit in Jamaica. Now, if you don't know the slang, a Boops was a sugar daddy, a guy with money who spoiled his girlfriend. Supercat turned that word into a national catchphrase. You know you've made it when your song changes the way people talk on the street. But he didn't just stick with party anthems. Tracks like Vineyard Party and Under Pressure showed he could mix fun with commentary, tackling social themes while keeping the vibe strong. That balance made him stand out in a scene where many DJs stuck to one lane. By the mid-80s, Supercat had gone from a local talent to a dancehall star. His live performances were electric. He could walk into a sound clash with rival DJs, and 9 times out of 10, he'd walk out the winner. Imagine going into a rap battle today against someone who doesn't just rhyme better than you, but has the crowd chanting his name before you even open your mouth. That was Supercat's reality. The combination of his recorded hits and live dominance made record producers take notice. Labels like Techniques and Winston Riley's Stables started working with him, giving him wider exposure. With each release, his reputation grew, and his fan base stretched beyond Kingston into the rest of Jamaica and eventually overseas. Supercat had officially broken through. He wasn't just another DJ hoping for his shot. He was a force, a rising star who brought his neighborhood edge into a scene that craved authenticity. And with the 80s dancehall wave lifting him up, it was only a matter of time before Supercat's fire burned across the globe. International fame. By the late 1980s, Supercat wasn't just a dancehall star. He was one of the names defining the entire genre. The local buzz had already crowned him king of the sound clashes. But now, it was time to see if his fire could catch on outside of Jamaica. Spoiler alert, it did. And it spread fast. Supercat's style was tailor-made for the moment. Dancehall was starting to get attention from audiences overseas, especially in the United States, where reggae already had a foothold, thanks to Bob Marley and other roots legends. But American listeners were ready for something different, something edgier, and Supercat delivered exactly that. His rapid-fire delivery and no-nonsense lyrics stood out in a way that felt both exotic and familiar. He wasn't polished, but he was magnetic. In 1982, he dropped Boop's Day, the single that made him a household name in Jamaica and started opening international doors. That track was everywhere. Radio, street parties, even blaring out of taxis. People outside Jamaica didn't always know what the word boops meant, but they knew the beat was irresistible, and the swagger in Supercat's voice made them lean in closer. The real breakthrough came in 1992 with the release of Dadda, his first major label album on Columbia Records. And let me tell you, that was a moment. This wasn't just an independent Jamaican project, this was a big American label, betting on a dancehall artist. The album had hits like Ghetto Red Hot, which became one of his most iconic tracks. That song wasn't just a hit in Jamaica. It made noise on US charts, MTV, and the radio. Suddenly, Supercat was the face of dancehall for a global audience. Dadda also showed just how versatile he could be. He had tracks that worked for hardcore dancehall fans and others that slid right into the hip-hop and R&B mix. This crossover appeal is what separated him from a lot of his peers. You could hear Supercat at a block party in Kingston, but you might also hear him in a New York club right after a Biggie or Tupac record. Speaking of Biggie, Supercat's rise to international fame got another boost from his collaborations. On Dadda, he linked with hip-hop heavyweights like Heavy D and the notorious B.I.G. At the time, hip-hop and dancehall were like cousins who lived in different houses, but kept sneaking over to borrow each other's clothes. Supercat's rugged style fit perfectly with that trend. His collabs helped bridge the gap between the two genres, opening the door for future stars like Shabba Ranks, Sean Paul, and Beanie Man to get US recognition. And let's not forget his stage presence. Supercat wasn't just a studio guy. On stage, he had the same raw energy he brought to the sound clashes in Kingston. He could hype up a crowd in New York the same way he did in Jamaica. For fans who had never even been to the Caribbean, he was their first taste of real dancehall energy, and they loved it. By the mid-1990s, Supercat had officially gone global. He was touring internationally, showing up on US television, and influencing a whole new wave of artists. At 29, he had cemented himself not just as a Jamaican star, but as one of the key voices bringing dancehall into the mainstream. He wasn't just the Wild Apache anymore. He was a global figure, a legend in the making. Collaborations. If there's one thing Supercat knew how to do, it was share the mic with the right people at the right time. His talent was undeniable on its own, but those collaborations with major artists helped him cross boundaries most dancehall stars could only dream about. When you saw his name next to American hip-hop and R&B acts, you knew something big was about to happen. Let's start with Heavy D. Now, Heavy D wasn't just a rapper. He was a bridge between reggae, dancehall, and hip-hop, and he had the charisma to pull it off. When Supercat teamed up with him in the early 90s, it wasn't just a feature, it was a cultural exchange. Heavy D was Jamaican-born, so he got the vibe, and he knew how to showcase Supercat's strengths to an American audience. Their collaborations gave dancehall this shiny new platform in the US, showing it wasn't just local flavor, it was global energy. Then there was the notorious B.I.G. Yeah, you heard that right. Supercat linked up with Biggie at a time when the Brooklyn rapper was just starting to become the biggest name in hip-hop. Imagine the Wild Apache trading lines with one of the most powerful voices in rap history. That kind of crossover was rare in the early 90s, and it pushed Supercat into a whole new league. These weren't just guest verses. They were moments that showed dancehall could sit at the same table as hip-hop royalty. Supercat also worked with Mary J. Blige and other R&B stars, sliding his gritty voice into smoother tracks without losing his edge. That's part of what made him special. He didn't water down his sound to fit in. He brought his authentic self into every collaboration, and instead of clashing, it made the music more dynamic. You could hear the rough edges of Kingston rubbing up against the polished grooves of American R&B, and the result was magic. And here's the kicker. These collaborations weren't just good for Supercat, they reshaped the way American music looked at dancehall. Before artists like him, reggae was still often lumped into a niche category. Marley had opened the door with roots reggae, but dancehall hadn't fully crossed over. By linking with Biggie, Heavy D, and others, Supercat cracked that door wide open. Suddenly, dancehall was cool, it was relevant, and it was part of the mainstream conversation. Of course, Supercat wasn't just benefiting from these collaborations. He was influencing his collaborators too. You can hear shades of his sharp, rhythmic style in later hip-hop flows. Some of the swagger you hear in 90s rap, that came from the dancehall energy he and his peers injected into the mix. Supercat brought a level of raw confidence that hip-hop respected and sometimes borrowed. One of the best things about these collaborations was how they showcased Supercat's adaptability. He could stand toe-to-toe with hardcore rappers, slide into R&B tracks, or keep it raw with other reggae stars. That kind of versatility is rare, and it's part of what made him a legend. He wasn't boxed in. He was a cat, after all, slipping into different spaces, always landing on his feet. By the mid-90s, Supercat's name wasn't just recognized in Jamaica. It was recognized in hip-hop circles, on R&B charts, and in international tours. The collaborations amplified his reach and made him a true cultural icon. He wasn't just riding the dancehall wave, he was helping shape global music in real time. Controversies and setbacks. Every superstar story has its shadows, and for Supercat, the 1990s brought as much drama as it did success. Fame, especially the kind that crosses borders, comes with a magnifying glass. Every move, every misstep gets blown up bigger than life. For Supercat, the controversies and setbacks became part of his legend, but they also slowed down what could have been an unstoppable climb. One of the first challenges was his reputation for being unpredictable. Fans loved the wild Apache image on stage, but off stage that wildness sometimes turned into trouble. He was known for being outspoken, fiery, and unwilling to back down from confrontation. In the competitive world of dancehall, that earned him respect, but when you're trying to win over mainstream America, those same traits can make record labels nervous. Supercat also had brushes with the law. In the early 90s, reports surfaced about him being involved in violent incidents. At one point, he even faced accusations connected to shootings in Jamaica. Some of these stories were exaggerated, others were harder to untangle, but the result was the same. The media painted him as dangerous. Now, in Jamaica, being a bad man figure could boost your street credibility. In the US, it could shut doors. Radio stations, promoters, and labels don't always want to take risks on artists with headlines like that hanging over them. In 1993, tragedy struck when his close friend and fellow artist Nitty Gritty was shot and killed during a confrontation that allegedly involved Supercat. The details around that night are still debated, but the impact on his career was undeniable. Even though he was never convicted, his reputation took a hit. For many fans, the wild Apache persona suddenly felt less like an act and more like reality, and that scared some people off. There were also tensions with the industry itself. Supercat wasn't the kind of artist to bow down to corporate suits or compromise his sound just to please executives. That stubborn independence, while admirable, sometimes meant missed opportunities. Labels want control. Supercat wanted freedom. And let's be real, if you've built your career battling DJs and sound clashes, you're not about to let some record executive tell you how to spit your lines. All of this combined into a perfect storm. By the mid-90s, when dancehall was exploding in the mainstream, with acts like Shabba Ranks and later Sean Paul, Supercat's momentum had started to stall. He was still respected, still a legend, but the controversies made it harder for him to cash in on the full wave of international success. Behind the scenes, these struggles were taking a personal toll too. Fame can isolate artists, and when you add legal issues, media pressure, and industry conflicts, it's a recipe for burnout. Supercat started appearing less in the spotlight, pulling back from the non-stop pace that had once fueled his career. Fans began asking, "Where's Supercat? What happened to him?" That question would follow him for years. The controversies and setbacks didn't erase his accomplishments, but they did change the path. Instead of a smooth rise to legend status, Supercat's career became a roller coaster, thrilling highs, sharp drops, and long stretches where nobody knew what would happen next. It added to his mystique, sure, but it also meant his legacy came with a heavy dose of what if. Later, career and disappearance. After his meteoric rise and the drama of the 1990s, Supercat's career started to take a quieter turn. The wild Apache didn't vanish completely. He kept performing, recording, and making appearances, but it became clear that the spotlight he once commanded wasn't as bright as it used to be. Fans who had followed him from Kingston to New York began asking themselves the same question: why isn't Supercat everywhere anymore? Part of the slowdown was personal choice. After years of touring, sound clashes, and the constant grind of recording, even the most passionate performers need a breather. Supercat had been running at full speed since his teens, and stepping back allowed him to recharge, reflect, and focus on what mattered most outside the chaos of fame. That said, stepping back didn't mean disappearing completely. He still dropped singles, made guest appearances, and occasionally toured, especially in the Caribbean and parts of the US, with a strong reggae fan base. Another factor was the shifting music landscape. By the 2000s, dancehall was evolving. New artists like Sean Paul, Beanie Man, and Elephant Man were dominating charts and airwaves. Styles were changing, beats were getting faster, and younger fans gravitated toward fresh voices. Supercat, who had perfected his own signature style in the 80s and 90s, wasn't as omnipresent on the mainstream radar anymore. But here's the thing, that didn't make him irrelevant. Fans of classic dancehall still revered him, and fellow artists often cited him as a major influence. His impact on the genre was cemented, even if the radio stations weren't spinning his tracks as much. Around this time, Supercat also took on mentoring roles, helping younger DJs navigate the tricky waters of the music industry. He shared lessons from his own journey, how to command the stage, how to respect the crowd, and how to maintain authenticity even under pressure. It wasn't the headlines or awards, but it was meaningful work, shaping the next generation of artists who would continue the dancehall tradition. He also experimented with collaborations and remix projects, some of which brought him back into the limelight briefly. Fans got glimpses of the Wild Apache magic in remixes of his old hits or new tracks featuring contemporary artists. These moments reminded everyone why he earned his legendary status and why he remained a touchstone in the dancehall world. And yet, there was a mysterious side to this period. Supercat became more private, less prone to media interviews, and careful about public appearances. Unlike the flashiness of his earlier career, this phase was quiet, deliberate. Some fans speculated about health issues, others wondered if he was simply done with the endless scrutiny. Whatever the reason, it added to his mystique, the kind of "where did he go" aura that keeps legends alive in the public imagination. Despite fewer appearances, the music never left him. His classic tracks continued to play in clubs, parties, and playlists around the globe. New fans discovered him through streaming platforms, dancehall throwbacks, and viral clips. Even in relative absence, Supercat's influence was alive and undeniable. By the end of this era, it was clear that the Wild Apache's career had entered a quieter, more reflective phase. He wasn't chasing charts or fame anymore. Instead, he was a living legend, shaping dancehall's history while leaving the stage open for others. That disappearance from the spotlight wasn't the end. It was a strategic pause, setting the stage for whatever surprises the next chapters of his life would bring. Surprising comebacks. Just when fans thought Supercat had quietly faded into dancehall history, he had a way of popping back onto the scene and reminding everyone why he earned the Wild Apache nickname. His comebacks weren't loud or overhyped. They were strategic, unexpected, and packed with the kind of energy only he could deliver. And trust me, every time he returned, people took notice. One of the first signs of his resurgence came in the early 2000s, when he started appearing at international festivals. While he wasn't headlining massive arenas like he had in the 90s, his live performances at events in the Caribbean, Europe, and the United States still drew crowds. Fans of classic dancehall treated these appearances like holy pilgrimages, while younger audiences got a first-hand look at the charisma and stage presence that had shaped the genre. Watching him perform songs like Ghetto Red Hot and Dem No Worry We reminded everyone that he hadn't lost his touch. Collaborations played a big role in these comebacks too. Supercat linked up with newer artists, blending his classic style with modern beats. It wasn't about chasing trends. It was about showing that dancehall's roots could coexist with today's sounds. In some cases, these collaborations introduced him to a whole new generation of fans who might never have heard of the Wild Apache otherwise. The beauty of it was that his voice, attitude, and unmistakable delivery added authenticity and gravitas to any track he touched. Another notable comeback moment happened in 2010 when he performed at a major reggae festival in Jamaica. Media coverage framed it as a return to glory, and fans went wild. For many, it was the first time in years that Supercat felt fully visible again on a big stage. The performance reminded the world that even at 47, his energy was relentless, his lyrical precision sharp, and his connection with the audience unmatched. That night, the Wild Apache lived up to his name once again. And let's not forget the smaller, unexpected moments. Supercat occasionally showed up on social media, posted snippets of studio sessions, or made surprise appearances at local events. It wasn't the non-stop publicity machine you see today. It was subtle, teasing, and just enough to get people talking. His strategy worked perfectly. It kept his name relevant without oversaturating the market, proving that comebacks don't always need a flashy campaign to make an impact. The comeback era also reinforced his influence on younger artists. Rising dancehall and reggae stars often mentioned him in interviews, cited his techniques, and even brought him on as a guest for tracks or shows. For Supercat, these comebacks weren't about reclaiming the top spot. They were about cementing his legacy, mentoring new talent, and reminding the world why his sound had endured for decades. Through all these returns, one thing was clear. Supercat didn't need to dominate charts to stay relevant. His timing, consistency, and authenticity were enough. Every appearance, every collab, and every stage moment became a statement. The Wild Apache was still here, still sharp, and still capable of stealing the show. Even with periods of quiet, these comebacks prove that Supercat's influence was more than a flash in the pan. He had earned legendary status, and he could reappear at any time, just like a cat, landing on his feet and leaving everyone impressed. Where Supercat is now at 62. Fast forward to today, and Supercat is 62 years old. You might be thinking, is he still performing, still making music? The answer is yes, but in a way that reflects both his age and his status as a dancehall legend. He isn't constantly on tour or chasing the charts anymore. Instead, he's in a phase that's more about legacy, influence, and the occasional surprise appearance that reminds everyone why he earned the nickname Wild Apache in the first place. These days, Supercat maintains a lower profile than during his peak years, but he hasn't disappeared completely. He occasionally performs at festivals, special events, and charity shows, drawing loyal fans who have followed him for decades. The energy he brings to the stage hasn't dimmed. If anything, there's a wisdom and precision in his delivery that only comes with experience. Watching him perform today is like seeing a master at work. He doesn't need to shout to command attention. The crowd already knows the legend standing in front of them. Supercat also stays connected to the music industry behind the scenes. He mentors younger artists, offering guidance on everything from stage performance to navigating the complex world of music contracts. His advice is rooted in decades of first-hand experience, both the highs of international fame and the lows of controversy. For rising dancehall artists, having Supercat as a mentor is like having a map of the entire jungle. He knows the shortcuts, the pitfalls, and how to survive the climb. Beyond mentoring, he keeps his voice alive through collaborations and occasional recordings. While he doesn't release albums as frequently as he once did, new tracks still drop from time to time, often in partnership with younger artists looking to capture that authentic old-school flavor. These collaborations show that Supercat's influence hasn't faded. Instead, it bridges the gap between classic dancehall and today's evolving sound, ensuring his presence is felt by both longtime fans and newcomers. On the personal side, Supercat has embraced a more private lifestyle. He's not constantly in the media spotlight or embroiled in controversy anymore. Instead, he focuses on family, community, and his own well-being. This quieter life doesn't make him any less interesting. It makes him human. For a man whose life has been public for decades, stepping back to maintain balance is both wise and understandable. Interestingly, his story has taken on a kind of mythical status. New fans discover him through streaming platforms, playlists, and dancehall throwback compilations. Social media clips of his performances go viral, reminding everyone why his music shaped a genre and inspired countless artists worldwide. Even without being on top of the charts, his name commands respect. Supercat at 62 isn't just surviving, he's thriving in a way that fits his life stage. He's a living legend who knows his influence, values authenticity, and carefully chooses how to engage with the music and fans. He may not be in every club or topping every playlist, but his legacy is secure. In short, the Wild Apache still has claws. He may move more deliberately, but his music, mentorship, and stage presence continue to leave a mark. Supercat is a reminder that age doesn't erase talent, it just changes the way it's expressed. And for fans of dancehall and reggae, that's more than enough. From the streets of Kingston to international stages, Supercat's journey has been anything but ordinary. He's faced controversy, conquered dancehall, influenced hip-hop, and made comebacks that left fans cheering. Now, at 62, he balances legacy, mentorship, and the occasional electrifying performance, proving that age hasn't dulled the Wild Apache's edge. His story reminds us that legends don't fade. They adapt, inspire, and leave a lasting mark on music and culture. If you enjoyed this, look at Supercat's incredible journey. Hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more celebrity history and shocking stories.